haven't slept in what feels like weeks. Every night the same terror unfolds. The same unrelenting, gut-wrenching terror that I can't shake off. The story I'm about to tell you, it's something that's been haunting me. And if you're reading this, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Because maybe once you hear this, it'll start happening to you too. It started a few months ago, simple at first. Bad dreams. Nightmares like anyone would have after a long day. I didn't think much of them. Who doesn't have a bad dream here and there? But the thing is, these nightmares weren't just nightmares. It was like someone had found a way to break into my brain, twist the knife deep into the darkest part of me, and pull. The dreams didn't make any sense at first. Random images. Voices that didn't seem to belong to anyone I knew. But they felt ancient, old, like they were coming from another time, another world. At first, I convinced myself it was stress. Work had been brutal. My relationship was falling apart. My dad was in the hospital, and I was barely keeping myself together. So, yeah, of course I'd have some bad dreams. But then, they got worse. Much worse. The first real dream started on a Wednesday. I remember because I woke up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, the scream still lodged in my throat. In that dream, I wasn't myself. I was someone else, in another time, another place. And I was dying. I was standing in the middle of a dense forest, the air thick with the stench of decay. There were trees towering above me, their branches hanging low, almost like skeletal hands reaching out to grab me. The ground was wet, like it had rained for days. My feet sank into the mud as I walked, the air heavy with the sound of distant chanting. I wasn't alone. There were people in front of me, dozens, maybe more. Their faces were covered by strange, carved masks, primitive-looking, almost tribal. They were all gathered in a circle, murmuring something I couldn't understand, their voices low, rhythmic, like a prayer. In the center of the circle was a stone altar, rough and uneven, stained with something dark, something that looked like blood. I tried to turn around to run, but my legs wouldn't move. My feet were frozen to the spot. And then I saw her, a woman, her body bruised and broken, tied to the altar with thick ropes. Her chest was heaving, her breath shallow, and her eyes. God, her eyes were filled with terror. I knew what was going to happen before it did. One of the figures stepped forward, holding a crude stone knife, the blade chipped and jagged. He raised it high above his head, the chanting growing louder, faster, more frenzied. And then, in one swift motion, he brought it down. I felt the blade tear through her flesh. I felt it like it was happening to me. Her scream echoed through the forest, a sound so raw, so primal, it sent a shock of terror straight through my bones. And as her blood spilled onto the altar, soaking the stone, I realized something. She wasn't just dying. She was cursing me. Her eyes locked onto mine, her mouth moving silently, and I could hear her voice in my head. This is your fault. You did this to me. You will suffer for it. I woke up screaming, my body shaking uncontrollably, the sound of her voice still ringing in my ears. I told myself it was just a nightmare, just a random, awful dream. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. It felt too real, like I had actually been there, in that forest, watching her die. And worse, like she knew me. The next night it happened again, and the night after that. Every single night I found myself in a different place, a different body, experiencing someone's death in the most horrific, gut-wrenching way possible. It was like I was being forced to relive the final moments of people who had died thousands of years ago, people who had suffered unspeakable fates, all while knowing it was somehow my fault. There was the man who was burned alive by his own village, tied to a wooden post as the flames consumed him, his screams filling the air as his skin blistered and blackened. His eyes met mine as the fire crawled up his body, and he whispered through the smoke, "You did this to me." There was the woman who was stoned to death by a mob, each rock crashing against her body with sickening thuds, her blood splattering the ground. With every strike, she glared at me through the chaos, her broken mouth forming the words, "You let them do this." And then there was the child no older than 10 who drowned in a river, her tiny hands clawing at the water as she struggled to breathe, her face pale and cold as the current dragged her under. In her final moments, her eyes found mine, her lips moving as she mouthed, "You could have saved me." Every night, a new death. Every night, a new accusation. It was always my fault. At first, I tried to tell people, my friends, my girlfriend, even my therapist. I told them about the dreams, about how real they felt, how I could feel their pain, hear their voices, even after I woke up. But no one believed me. Stress, they said. You're overworked, it's just your mind playing tricks on you. Maybe they were right. Maybe I was just losing my mind. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like something else. Something bigger. The worst part? Every time I woke up, I felt weaker, more drained, like the life was being sucked out of me. I started avoiding sleep, but it didn't matter. The dreams would come for me anyway, pulling me into their world, into their suffering, night after night after night. I began to see things during the day, two shadows moving in the corners of my vision, faint whispers in the wind that no one else could hear. I'd catch glimpses of the people from my dreams, those who had died standing in the distance, watching me with their accusing eyes. They never came closer, but they were always there, waiting. And then one night it changed. I found myself standing in a vast, open field. The sky was dark, filled with swirling storm clouds, and the air was thick with the smell of rain. In the distance, I saw them, hundreds of them. The people from my dreams, all of them, standing in a line, their eyes fixed on me. I tried to run, but my legs wouldn't move. I was frozen in place, trapped, as they began to march toward me, their footsteps echoing across the field. As they drew closer, I could see the horror etched into their faces, the burns, the bruises, the blood. Their bodies were broken, twisted, mutilated in ways I can't even describe, and yet their eyes never wavered. You did this, they chanted, their voices merging into one deafening roar. You caused this. You will suffer as we have suffered. They were so close now, so close I could feel their cold breath on my skin, smell the rot and decay of their bodies. And then, just as they reached me, I felt a sharp, searing pain in my chest, like a knife being driven straight through my heart. I looked down, and there it was, buried deep in my flesh, blood pouring from the wound. I screamed. And that's when I woke up. But the pain didn't go away. Even now, as I write this, I can feel it, the burning, stabbing sensation in my chest. It hasn't stopped since that night. It's like the wound followed me out of the dream, a constant reminder that I can't escape this, that I'll never escape this. I don't know how much longer I can take it. Every night, they come for me. Every night, they die again and again, and they make sure I know it's all my fault. And one day, I know they're going to take me with them. The nightmares. They haven't stopped. Every night, without fail, I'm thrown back into the past, into some twisted version of ancient horrors. I've witnessed plagues sweeping through cities, watching as men, women, and children wither away, their bodies rotting while they're still alive. I felt the searing pain of arrows piercing my flesh during battles I know nothing about, in lands that I could never identify. I've been flayed alive, each strip of skin peeled from my body while I screamed until my voice gave out. But even worse than the deaths themselves are the accusations that follow. They blame me. Each one of them. It's always my fault. They scream at me, cry, beg, and curse my name. And the worst part? I'm starting to believe them. It's not just the nights anymore. The waking hours are becoming a living hell too. I see them everywhere I go now, lurking in the periphery of my vision, their hollow eyes tracking my every move. In the shower, I see their distorted faces in the mist on the mirror. In the street, I feel their cold hands brush against my skin. I can't walk anywhere without hearing faint whispers following me, voices calling me a murderer, a coward, a betrayer. It's all around me, there's no escape. I've tried everything: medication, therapy, meditation, even some of that new age crap people talk about. Nothing works. I've even resorted to staying awake for days at a time, thinking that maybe, just maybe, if I don't sleep, the dreams won't find me. But they do. The moment I close my eyes, even for a second, they're there, waiting. And when I don't sleep, they come during the day, haunting my every breath. The faces of the dead flash in front of me, their mangled bodies etched in my mind like some horrific slideshow on repeat. Their words never stop, their screams never fade. I'm drowning in guilt. But guilt for what? I don't know these people. I've never seen them before, never hurt anyone in my life, yet they act like I'm responsible for every horrific thing that's ever happened to them. I'm starting to question my sanity. Did I do something in another life, maybe? Have I been cursed? Did I commit some ancient sin I can't remember? Or am I just losing my mind? Last week I went to see someone about it. Not a therapist, a medium. Yeah, I know how it sounds, but I was desperate. She was this old woman, sitting in a dark room full of crystals and candles, the kind of place you'd think was a joke. But when I sat down in front of her, when she took my hand and looked into my eyes, the smile vanished from her face. She knew.